Hello, 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 everyone. This is Tanika Seams, and I am the Mindful Coach, and this is Mindful Intentions, Nurture and Drive Your Business. And this is my third and final guest of today. If you've been keeping up, you've seen I've had some great guests, and we're going to wrap it up with our final guest, who is Greg Wieting. He is a healer who helps leaders and entrepreneurs heal their anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and trauma that they can't think or talk their way out of. He's the founder of Prisma, a framework overlaying trauma, neuroscience, and energy medicine with somatic and mindfulness based practices. And those of you who know me know that that speaks to my heart as well. Everything's been speaking to my heart today. So I don't know about you, but all of these things resonate with me. So he, like I said, it's a mindfulness based practice, and he's developed this while healing his own anxiety, depression, and chronic pain rooted in trauma. This included unraveling a severe spinal curvature and standing 3 inches taller today. Now, he's not the first guest that we've heard that has grown inches by healing their trauma. So we know that this works, and it's been proven. So if you've heard this before and you were skeptical, hear it again today so you can know and be healed. Over the last 2 decades, Greg has helped thousands heal through his one-on-one practice and has certified hundreds of healthcare professionals in his methodology. His new online course and community now make healing practical and accessible to all. You can go online at www.gregwhiting.com and also www.prismamethod.com, and he'll leave those links with you at the end. We'll also have them at our website so you can connect with him. But right now, you can hear it straight from him, learn how to be healed, understand a little bit more about who Greg is, what he does, and why he does it. Hello, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Tanika. Thanks for having me. I love your energy. I love your enthusiasm. I thought I was the only one who unraveled their spine through healing trauma. You need to introduce me to this other person.
I sure will. She was actually here a couple of weeks ago, and it was so crazy because she said that she was said that she was mentally ill. She had all these things going on, and then she just learned how to heal herself, and then she grew 3 inches taller. And she said that she had X-rays to prove it. And so yeah, I'll get you guys connected with one another.
Yeah, I mean, I've been told countless times by different chiropractors and doctors that that's impossible. That just can't happen, and it happens, right? I think the lie of trauma is we can't, and the truth of healing is we can. And our body is just harboring the subconscious and unconscious mind, for better or for worse. And so, a lot of times those regressive thoughts and beliefs that are organized around trauma to try to protect us, have a detrimental cost to our health. And so that's been a lot of my work to kind of uncover, what are we storing in the body, and how do we teach the body how to metabolize it, process it, make sense of it, release it. So we're not held in these, rigid frameworks that really bind us and limit us.
Absolutely. I wonder sometimes how we learn these things or if they're inherited. We have a 5-month-old grandbaby, and as I watch him develop, I laugh and I tell him, I go, I remember when we didn't know you, when you didn't exist, when your mom first told us that you were coming and we were imagining what you were going to be. And then you arrived and you first came and you didn't even have your eyes open. And these different stages of him developing. And I remember when you didn't do anything but just sleep. And now you react, from the moment of not visualizing anything, and now he can see movement, and not only from the movement to reactions of things. And he did something one day, and my husband goes, nobody taught him that. How does he know how to react in that way?
Mm-hmm.
And then we started thinking about laughter. He laughs and he knows when to laugh, and we go, but he knows when to cry. Why do we find it amazing that he can laugh, but we don't question that he knows how to cry? And there's certain things that in the body that it knows how to do. And it's like, he's never been traumatized, but he cries. But we don't question that. But he laughs, and we question, how does he know how to laugh? What does he know that's funny? But as we get older, as you said yourself, we go through these years of trying to figure out how to get past all of these things that we've learned. But when do we start learning these things? At what stage? And how do we understand where it comes from?
Yeah. I think we're taught that we're all a blank slate when we're born, and I just don't know how true that is, because I think we all have different predispositions, where you can bring a newborn child to the ocean and they may love being close to the water, where that may be very terrifying for another newborn. So it's like we come into the world with certain imprints, and so there's a lot more understanding of the impact of intergenerational trauma, and how that is passed through the lineages, and so how that can keep certain people in states of hypervigilance, or these freeze responses. And so there's something to look at there, and unfortunately we can work with those maladaptations to stress and those imprints from intergenerational.
What are you doing this for? And if you're not at the
Sorry about that. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Are you there?
I'm here. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I think we are coming into the world with all sorts of patterning from generations past that is our work to kind of process in this life, but that also makes us susceptible to kind of the imprints in this lifetime that can have a compounding effect. So it's our job to kind of interrogate and kind of look under the hood, so to speak, to kind of to better understand how these imprints kind of, the residue of these traumatic imprints and the impact they have on us, and how to understand what we need beneath those impacts, and better be in a better conversation with ourselves to get our needs met, and to just live more in the fulfillment of who we are beyond these protective strategies that we often have organized our whole identity around.
Yeah. Now, I spoke with someone earlier today that spoke about trauma, and often when we hear trauma, we think it's something really stressful or traumatic that we've gone through. But trauma can be something as small as stubbing our toe, as big as being in a house fire, or devastating as being in a car crash, or even more dramatic than that. Can you talk about trauma and maybe what you've gone through and what it took for you to heal?
Yeah, for sure. And I look at just trauma as any lived experience that we didn't support it in, where we felt isolated and alone. That kind of felt too overwhelming for us to make sense of in the moment. And so, there's, I wish I could reference it. There's this beautiful story, though, of a child who witnessed 9/11, but they were around a bunch of firefighters and they had just a lot of support, even though they were witnessing this traumatic experience. And they drew, a picture of it. And the picture was all of the care and, all of the first responders. So they had a very positive association with a very tragic event, right? So that event did not imprint as PTSD for that individual because they had a support structure around them, right? And so I think a big piece of trauma, I think if people identify, well, I'm not a veteran, I haven't been abused, or, I haven't been, assaulted. So they may not identify with trauma, but in early development, it could be quite traumatic if we're just not receiving consistent care from our primary caregivers. If it's not reliable and consistent, that lack of emotional attunement, lends itself to, this patterning of feeling isolated and alone, as if no one has our back, right? And so I think that's a lot of folks who then are experiencing anxiety and depression later in life have a harder, more difficult time tracking it back to trauma. And oftentimes it's just that lack of emotional attunement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my own story. I have just always, from early childhood, had struggled with chronic pain. And later that kind of led into more anxiety and depression, and just didn't have much of an understanding of that at all. And, in my early years, just kind of self-medicated with alcohol. And after college, I kind of was like, that's not the right path for me to continue down. But, I was just inches away from pain meds and, antidepressants. But there's something inside of me just told me that wasn't the right path for me. And around that time, I was introduced to energy medicine through a friend who was a massage therapist. And she had actually first offered me a massage, but I was living with so much pain that even the thought of a massage, I didn't want a massage because that touch just would have been too painful. So that's why she introduced me to energy medicine. And she said, I can actually just work on a much more gentle, subtle level. And, I'd never heard of energy medicine, but I had great trust in my friend. And so I took her up on her offer, and immediately my whole system just started to unwind. And I realized I had found something that I didn't even know I was looking for. And so within a year, I started to study energy medicine, and that led me into meditation and mindfulness. And yeah, that was when I really started to uncover the trauma that I wasn't even aware that I was carrying in my body. My brain had just suppressed a whole lot of memories from early development. And again, that was, to try to protect me, right? And so sometimes this content's going to surface once we've developed more capacity and resource to navigate it and to make sense of it. And so, yeah, energy medicine, mindfulness, and then later in my years started to learn more about trauma and neuroscience, and started to connect all these dots, and piece together kind of the pillars of the system that I now share with my students to kind of create a roadmap for healing, because it can be a windy road, it could be a bumpy road. So it's often helpful to kind of have some mile markers along the way to kind of let us know where we're at, where we're headed.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, this is just so eye-opening, because I started thinking about my journey, and I really feed off of energy. I'm big on energy. And I remember my husband used to always try to rub my back, and I'd be like, don't do that. It hurts. And he goes, everybody loves massages. And I'm like, I don't. It hurt. They hurt. They absolutely, I don't want anybody giving me a massage, and I don't want anybody rubbing me like that. It just hurts. And not until I started practicing mindfulness and meditating and energy healing was I able to get a massage. And I remember when I got a massage, and I was like, my husband was giving me a massage, and I was like, oh my God, that just feels so good. And he goes, are you kidding me? The way you used to scream and complain about how bad it hurt. And I go, but this just feels really good. And I was like, it did hurt. It felt like my bones would be breaking. And it was because there was so much built up that I couldn't let go and release that energy. But until, like you said, I was able to release and really heal through that energy healing and understand where it was coming from, I didn't know. And a lot of us don't know what we're walking around with and what we have bottled up, because we become used to it. It becomes a part of us. And we think that that's the way that it's supposed to be. And when I felt that touch, and it was like, wow, that's what this is supposed to feel like, I didn't know that that was the right way that it was supposed to feel. And a lot of people are walking around unhealed, thinking that that is the right way to be. And it's okay to want to be healed and not know what to do. Can you talk about how to take those steps towards reaching out to get healed?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what it took for you?
Yeah, well, and I look at healing as a process that, we heal ourselves. So even though people may call me a healer, I'm really just sharing tools and insight that help people heal themselves. So I'll never claim to heal another, just sharing the tools that helped me heal myself. And so I think learning how to regulate the nervous system is, foundational. And tracking the nervous system, being aware of, when we are in a state of hyperarousal or hypoarousal. So when we have kind of flipped our lid and we're just no longer living in our upper brain, we've just kind of defaulted to kind of survival. What's going on for you? And so, so nervous system regulation is a big piece, and embodiment. A lot of times we're not in our bodies because the pain that's stored in our bodies is just too great, right? So inhabiting our bodies is not a safe place. So slowly learning how to land back into the body. I just love the visual of kind of the seaplanes when they land on water, they kind of bounce up and they land and they bounce up. And so it takes a long time for that seaplane to finally land on water. And so I think a lot of healing is about training the nervous system about how to finally land in that state of kind of rest, digest, a place of safety, a place of stillness, which is very foreign to most of us, right? The world isn't very conducive for that. And so, kind of back to what you were sharing earlier, I think we're so organized around our pain, and that's where the mindfulness comes in to kind of reorient our awareness from pain to possibility, and kind of shifting our identification from pain to really tapping, because we are not our pain, but when we are really at the effect of our pain, we forget that. And so kind of teasing out who we are, and then our pain is outside of us. And so kind of creating space and distance between us and our pain, which helps us just locate, a deeper truth around who we are, that, the more we become settled in that place within ourselves, it's like pain will come and go, as will other symptoms. But, a state of wellness is just no longer being tethered to the pain. Knowing that experience is momentary, but presence is, is far more endearing and enduring.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Do you think there is a thing as far as, I believe in a process, but I just want to ask you, do you believe in 100% complete wholeness in healing? Or do you think that there's a process in healing?
Yeah, no, I agree. I tell my clients and my students all the time that, healing is a process. Healing is non-linear. Healing is not, I think in the world today, there's, a lot of like anxiety hacks, which I think are lies. I don't think there are quick fixes or silver bullets. Not to say that sometimes healing shifts can be spontaneous and quick and long lasting, but, I look at healing as just a path of awakening. And I think of wholeness as just an experience of self that we can continually deepen into. And I often will use the imagery of kind of the next basement level of our wounding, where we're just continuing to revisit these core imprints of our wounding. But as we grow and develop, we have new perspective, new insight, a new vantage point to look at past wounding and gather more understanding and more data points. So I don't think it's ever a one and done. I do think we can come out of a certain place where we're just more available to live our life. And so I think there's different phases to healing where we may not be in the trenches of healing, but I think in terms of, a path of awareness and mindfulness, I think we continue to live in a path of awareness and mindfulness, throughout our lives. Because let's face it, I mean, if we look at what's happening in the world today, it's not easy out there. So even if we've done a pretty good job resolving, the imprints of the past, current events are going to, activate us and imprint upon us. And we want to keep that in check. We want to work with that. We don't want to keep it piling on.
Thanks for clarifying that for me, actually, because sometimes I feel like I'm always on a journey of growth and transformation. I'm forever trying to be a better version of myself. And that's my life goal, to try to be better than I was yesterday. And I feel like I test myself on different levels, and I'm like, okay, I passed that test because I didn't react like I used to react, and I did a great job, and I'm growing. Yay, I'm doing well. And I'll be on this scale of, oh yay, I'm great, and the way I'm reacting is awesome, and that's good. And then something will happen, and not that I reacted the way that I used to do, but I'll react in a way that I shouldn't have probably reacted. And then I'll immediately feel like I failed. You know what I'm saying? And I'll feel like, ugh. And then I'll go to this place of, I'm back, not necessarily back to feeling like I've got to get to growing again, but just feel like now I'm at a standstill, a plateau, to where, I'm going backwards. How, and what I feel like you've clarified to me the process of that, because that's what I'm saying. I feel like in my mind, I think that you've got to get to this place and say, okay, now it's completed. Now my healing process is over. I'm completed. I'm whole. I'm good. I'm past all of that. I'm not affected. I don't have those triggers anymore. I'm evolved, and I'm good now. But how do we sustain, to not allow ourselves to fall into that trap, to feel like, I've overcome that, and I've gotten past that point. And we do have those triggers often, maybe, that might come up, but we're not bound by that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense of what I'm saying.
Well, and again, back to that nonlinear, I look at growth as 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I feel like there's always going to be that tension of forward expansion and then the backward contraction. But with each forward expansion, we're just like nudging it towards growth. And so even when we have some contraction, it's not taking us back to ground zero.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to normalize that expansion and contraction is just part of the experience. And the more we can take the judgment and the shame out of the contraction, I think the more we can gather the information, because each contraction, if there's a trigger, is like, wow, well, that's there's a wounded part of me that is feeling a certain way, that is thinking a certain thing, that is probably feeling pretty isolated and alone. So how do I tend to that part of myself? How do I reparent that part of myself? How do I coach that part of myself? Is there a message that part of myself has for me? Or is there a message that it would like to hear from me? So how do I hold my hand out to that part of myself and, bring it along, as opposed to like beating it up, right?
Yeah.
Because I think I was having this conversation with a client recently where sometimes they feel their wounding is, a monster inside, right? And they're battling with this monster. And I could relate, when I was suffering from the chronic pain before my spine began to unravel, it felt like there was a monster inside of me, and I was completely at odds with it. And it's like, no, that monster was just a wounded part of myself from early development, which needs just the opposite. That part of me needs a whole lot of love and compassion and support and care and understanding. And so I look at healing as just developing a robust relationship with ourself, right? So we learn how to have our own back. But to take the stigma out of it too, because I think no matter how much we've grown, growth isn't just, to a final destination. I think that otherwise, if we're no longer growing and we're no longer learning, then I'm not sure what we're doing. So, so if we can give ourselves the grace to know that in our growth and learning, we're going to have setbacks, then we can just normalize that and just, create space for that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we need to understand as a whole, and what people need to understand is that we are going to have setbacks, but I don't think we normalize that enough, because I think that a lot of times we sum it up to, I've just got a series of bad luck. This is just how my life is. Every time something good happens, here comes something bad. And I just don't ever have, nothing good ever lasts for long in my life. And if we continue to do that to ourselves and not realize that, in life, things are going to happen, but we've got to keep moving and keep pushing forward, and we can't beat ourselves up on guilt and shame. And I also had another lady on that was talking about the guilt and the shame and how they go hand in hand and try to keep us suppressed in those emotions and those feelings. But we have to try to escape ourselves from that. And they all tie to the trauma, of what we need to heal from. And there's all these things work together as this process. And so, once we learn that we are not bound by those things, and that we are someone really special outside of that, and that we can do great things outside of that, but we tie ourselves to it for some reason, and we feel like we have to carry that around. Because I had one of my girls said something to me. She said, she had done something wrong and something had happened. And she goes, yeah, but I feel like whenever I go somewhere and they said, oh, here she comes, she's always in trouble. And I go, well, is that how they really feel about you? Or is that what you feel? And I go, is that the truth? And you don't have to worry about that, because you know what's true. That's something that happened. It's in the past. And, because they might have just been making a remark, but you felt some kind of way about it. But it's not true, but it's the way you look at it. You felt some kind of way because you're still not healed from it. And no matter what somebody says, once you're healed from it, you'll be okay, no matter what's said about it. But you have to be okay with it, right? Because people are going to say whatever they want to say, but until you're okay with it, whatever they say, it's going to make you feel a certain way. Doesn't necessarily make it true, but you're still going to feel however you feel about it.
Yeah, a big piece is just pattern interrupting these narratives that run on default, right?
Yeah.
And again, catching the narrative, because when they're running default, we're not even conscious of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I often say that my job is just to help people feel their pain, because we've been often running from our pain, hiding from it, pushing it away. And so the more we grow in our capacity to sit with our pain, then we become aware of the narratives that have been organized around the pain. And we start to slow down and be like, well, wait, yeah, my whole life has been running as if that narrative is truth. And now it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So now how much of my life is that truth? But does it have to be? And is it really the truth?
Yeah.
And so, part of that then is tending to the wounded part that believes in that truth. And we want to nurture that part. But then we also want to take some active steps, and suspend the identity organized around the wound and take some action, outside of that identity, right? And I think that kind of takes us on that path from like victim, survivor to thriver consciousness, right? Well, who am I if I'm not the victim of that narrative? What would that feel like? What would it look like? What actions could I take? And so then that's the rewiring of the brain, where we kind of start to, orient to like a horizon of possibility, as opposed to being stuck in the trenches of the pain of the trauma.
Yeah. Absolutely. To someone that is at a point of not knowing where to begin, what would you say to them?
Yeah. There's no right or wrong, right? There's no right or wrong way to heal. I think it's a lot of exploration, right? A lot of my students and clients find me because they maybe feel like they haven't been able to talk or think their way out of pain. So then they are kind of more called to working with the energetics, because I feel like when we're working with energy medicine, it's kind of a vehicle to kind of dissolve and neutralize the subconscious and unconscious mind and the grip that it has on the body. And so then healing kind of happens despite us. So I've had a lot of clients that have been in traditional therapy for years and decades. And by no means am I knocking therapy. Therapy's been a lifesaver for me. And I needed something that could help get at how the trauma had been stored in my body. So a lot of times we may have a good intellectual understanding of our pain, but that doesn't fully release the grip of the pain on our body. So I really like an integrative approach. So, working with the support of a therapist, finding the support of an energy healer, how I work is kind of working with trauma and neuroscience as a roadmap, and then working with somatics and mindfulness is kind of what I'd call the GPS, and then the energy medicine is the vehicle. And I feel like for me personally, and what I found in sharing that with my students and clients, is it kind of gives us an intellectual framework for healing and an energetic framework. And so we're kind of coming at it from both ends. Everyone processes differently. Some of us process top down. So we need to kind of grok it and make sense of it intellectually before it can shift in our bodies. And some of us process bottom up, where we need to feel the shift physically in our bodies before the light bulb goes off in our brain. And what I love about energy medicine is working both top down and bottom up, and in crisscross pathways. And just like one example of that is perhaps we're releasing a holding of a belief in the sacrum. But all of a sudden, that's then triggering kind of the release of, or the balancing of some hormones and neural pathways in the brain. So it's like we may work with a shift in one area energetically, and then it kind of has a cascading effect on other areas. And so, how a belief can impact a muscle, how a muscle can impact a hormone, how a hormone can then impact a physiological function. These are all how we start to repattern, what I call the symphony orchestra of the body. And, trauma creates interference patterns and creates a whole lot of noise. So when we should be creating music, which is health, we're creating a lot of noise, which is then our illness and our symptoms. And what I love about energy medicine is, we don't have to figure it out intellectually. We can let the body start to kind of locate a place of safety where the nervous system can locate that rest and digest. And then everything else starts to come back online according to the body's own intelligence. But finding all those pieces for me was a journey. So that's why I love to kind of share this whole framework that I've created. But, so my advice for other folks is, don't get discouraged if, the first healer or the first therapist you find isn't a right fit, or if the first modality or treatment doesn't match you where you're at. Keep looking until you find the resonance, right? Until you find what works. And, because there's a lot of resources and support out there, but I think we need to and that's I think at the path of healing too, is learning how to become our own best advocate, and not give up on ourselves.
Absolutely. We gave out your website at the beginning, but tell us a little bit more how people can get to work with you.
Yeah. So on the website, I do have limited availability for one-on-one work, which is usually a 9 or 12 month journey where we work consistently through 9 or 12 months for a really deep arc of transformation, which I love. But my school makes the work that much more available and accessible, where the online course is 8 modules. The first module is the trauma foundations, which just gives people kind of an understanding of trauma and its, understanding of the nervous system. And then the 7 pillars of my system are the modules thereafter. And that kind of, helps to map out. I call the 7 pillars like the drop pins on the map. So you kind of have a map of healing, and you can kind of locate the different pillars that are really essential to kind of understand and embody within your healing path. And within those, it's kind of like a shift in mindset, right? Like, who are we when our nervous system is regulated, right? And so that map kind of takes us on a journey from pain to purpose, because I think feeling like we belong on this earth with a purpose and a mission is really important piece of healing, a sense of belonging. And so that pain to purpose is kind of that roadmap. And then there's access, if people like, to meditations that are three sessions a month that I guide online. And that's really helping people kind of assimilate and absorb the somatic and mindfulness-based practices. So that's the mind training to, really orient towards possibility, create that distance from pain, release identity organized around pain to kind of just sit more in the truth of who we are. And then the whole energy medicine foundation training. So then a whole self-care foundation training. And that's a monthly 3-hour workshop that happens. And so those three components, I feel, give people a really robust framework of healing. And it's kind of self-paced, right? And it gives people the option if they want to process more intellectually, work with the course and the workbooks and, map things out intellectually, or if they want to start more with the energy medicine and have a hands-on healing practice. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. What is something that you can leave our audience with that they can take away with them?
I think that I have to say, my work is to help people mine the gold of unresolved trauma. So I kind of sit in the understanding that our deepest wounds can really point us to just the deepest parts of ourselves. And that there's a deep possibility of awakening, and there's just a gift in our wounding. I know we're not always able to hear that, but just planting a seed of possibility that if you're hurting, there's something on the other side of that pain that is quite the gift, and to keep that in mind, and it's really just an invitation to tend to and to love yourself.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for coming and sharing your journey with us, talking to us about how you can heal through the trauma, and that we need to normalize it, because we definitely do need to look at how trauma is something that we go through, but it is not something that we are. And that is something that we can definitely overcome. And that, like you said, it's not linear, and it's not something that is going to be resolved in one day. But it is definitely something that we can be challenged with, but we don't have to be enamored with. So we don't have to live a life of trauma. We can be healed. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Go and visit the website. And if you are on your life journey, as we all are, and you are challenged with something that you find yourself not able to deal with, seek help, because there is so much help out there today. There is so much technology. There's so many people out there that are doing things that you can connect with. Greg is one of them. He knows what it is to be healed, and he knows how to help people. He doesn't say that he heals you, but he knows that he's been healed. So he knows that it's proven to work. So there is a purpose for your pain, and there is peace on the other side of that pain. As always, remember, you were created with a purpose. So go ahead and be great. Thank you for watching. This is Mindful Intentions, Nurture and Drive Your Business. So go mind your business. Have a great day. Talk with you soon.